Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
All right, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm your host, Adam Cruz, and I'm sitting here next to my fantastic partner,
Eddie Nicholas. What up, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. DYmusicradio.com.
Yes.
What up, Adam?
I'm so delighted to see you, my brother.
Yes, we're back.
Let's take a moment to let our listeners and our viewers know that the Freedom Radio Hour is here not only giving you fantastic music, but we're here to be your number one source for music, business, news, and trends from around the globe. We got to step out front and let everybody know. First of all, if you're watching this on a video, thank you. If you can, hit subscribe, or if you're listening on the podcast, rate us by giving us a rating and leaving a review, or download our free app for Android and iPhone users. Search us out. All right, so we got to talk about Spotify. They're in the news again.
Oh, what did they do now?
Well, this is something that you might be into. What you feeling? You getting the vapors from the news?
Yes, I'm getting the vapors from the news. I'm getting the menopause from the news already.
So what happened?
What did Spotify do?
Well, basically, Spotify has decided to open its doors to allow independent artists to directly upload their music onto their Spotify service.
Okay, are they trying to follow what Bandcamp does, or what?
Well, this is interesting that you mentioned Bandcamp, because right now, if you want to mess with the Spotify or some of the other outfits, you can't go directly to them. You have to use an aggregator, which is a fancy way of saying sign up for like a TuneCore or a CD Baby, or the Orchard, or there's a bunch of them. And what they will do is they will aggregate, which means to disseminate the music, put it out to all those websites, including Spotify. But Spotify is now offering the ability to go direct to them, circumventing the need for an aggregator. The other really interesting thing is, how much are they charging? Free. It costs you nothing to upload your content directly onto the Spotify.
But do you have to be a member of Spotify?
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that you catch the details. Yes.
It's all in the details.
That was always in the details, right? So let's talk about the pros. The pros is that you can now go direct instead of having to use an aggregator like CD Baby and TuneCore, which they charge a fee for distributing the content, right? So you can go direct. The second thing is that Spotify is charging $0, free 99 for you as an independent artist to go ahead and upload.
Well, it ain't free because you're still paying that monthly subscription.
Well, it's not charging you to right now. If you use CD Baby and TuneCore, they charge you up front to be able just to mess with them, which is what Spotify is avoiding now.
Okay.
But they're not stupid. So they realize that by doing this, they do a few things. They want to be able to tout that they have millions upon millions of material, music, songs on their service. So it behooves them. That means it benefits them to say, let's open the doors to direct distribution, because then instead of saying 30 million songs, we could say hundreds of millions of songs, which always looks good for prospective investors and such, or the business world, or for their value, and you could fill in the blank, right? The other thing that I think is kind of interesting is they're very keen to develop this exclusivity model that we've talked about before. Right now, most of these services have decided to loosen their belief system around exclusivity, because they realize that you could get the content anywhere. Whether you market that it's only available on Spotify, you could just do
and all is a search.
Yep, it's hop, skip, and a jump, and you'll find it somewhere else. So what Spotify is hoping to do is to automatically or organically create exclusivity, because independent artists, they feel, will go to Spotify exclusively over time and not the other websites because it's free.
Sound like Netflix to me in some
That's what I'm saying. Let's pay attention to this trend. What we're seeing right now, or what we're witnessing, are big streaming outfits like Spotify, who, don't forget, is publicly owned and traded now. Spotify can now tout a few things. They have millions more in terms of music now because of this. It is a beta mode, which means that they're still testing all the bugs and the glitches, and you have to be invited to participate. It's not just open doors right now, I mean, which is usual for these kinds of new initiatives. But Spotify is really trying to take over the streaming game. Their big competition is Apple Music, so they want to be able to go head and shoulders above the competition. So that's what Now, would you sign up because your stuff's already available on Spotify through aggregating it from in other ways, would you go directly with them if you knew that it was free to you?
No. And the only reason why, because I'm not part of their membership. And I don't intend to be a part of their membership.
Right, because to be a member means that you're subscribing to that
whatever that monthly fee is. And then I'm quite sure that once one gets in there, there's always, like you said, that little fine print. I can see them starting to order while it's free for you to get. I can see them starting to offer tiers.
Yes, exactly. Tiers meaning different levels of membership. You're right. You're very right.
You know, when you get up in there, it's free for you to upload it, but then if you give us $10, we can have you reach 10,000 more people, or we can direct you to X and X, A and R persons and all of that type of stuff. So, you know.
Right, they're going to take your money another way. See, we think that if this is a free service, as an artist, it's a great look, but they're going to take your money in other ways through incentive packages, tiers, like you said, through those membership. Also, they're hoping that you have the kind of following where others will jump onto the service and pay their $10 a month because they're following you.
Like girlfriend Taylor Swift, she went and made one little tweet, and thousands of children went back out. Young people, not children, young people got registered to vote.
Well, that's a great segue. Let's take a break. When
we
come
will be back.
Yep.
91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan. Eddie Nicholas.
Adam Cruz, and we're going to talk all about Taylor Swift and what's going on that you should pay attention to right here on the Freedom Radio Hour.
See, it must be some type of connected energy spirit, because I just brought up Taylor Swift and I did not know we were going to discuss her in the next segment. Wow.
Well, tune in. Come back with us.
Freedom Radio Hour. Live on Capital Radio 91.6 FM.
What up, beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, DY Music Radio. I'm Eddie Nicholas, and I'm here with my knowledgeable friend who just knows it all, and gives it all, and brings it all, the one and only Mr.
Adam Cruz. You're live and direct right here on the Freedom Radio Hour. We're your number one source for music business news and trends from around the globe. As my brother Eddie said, we are here to talk music business news. So, we're talking about what was going on in the world of Spotify, who has a very interesting relationship with the pop artist Taylor Swift. The quick recap is, remember that when Spotify first launched in the US, they had that free tier, which is a free trial service for X amount of time, and then they require you to pay into the service after time. Or you could opt to continue with the free service, but you would have to sit through these advertisements, right? So Taylor Swift, in an open letter, criticized Spotify because what she uncovered, or what was uncovered, was that Spotify was not paying royalties to artists during that free period. So she got into a whole hullabaloo and pulled her catalog from the Spotify service, citing this as a huge problem with art. She's saying, while you guys make your money hand over fist on advertisement offering this free tier, you don't pay us artists a dime.
Whose music you were playing
to make that money. So she pulled it, and she started a whole kerfuffle, which made Spotify take notice and change their rule. So what they did as in response to Taylor Swift and that outrage was to offer two-tier payments. For the free tier, they're offered a fraction of a penny per stream, which was super, 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 super tiny. And then the premium service, they'd pay a fraction of a penny per stream, which was a little bit more than the free. So that's how they got over. And then Taylor Swift and Spotify kissed and made up, and then she made available again her catalog on their service. Fast forward now to 2018. I know you shake. For those that are listening and can't see Eddie's face.
Well, no, my face is because I'm still trying to get over the word kerfuffle. See, I'm on the line. Kerfuffle. I love it. I'm trying to get over that word. Anyway, back to Taylor Swift.
So now, fast forward to 2018. A very interesting discovery has occurred now with Miss Taylor Swift. In particular, we have to go back. On the onset of the 2016 election here in the U.S., Taylor Swift, unbeknownst to her, became a symbol for the white supremacist groups that exist in our country and around the world. Why? Because for some reason, white supremacy groups attached themselves to Taylor Swift's physical appearance and tied that into a level of elitism in terms of the white race.
Precious white womanhood.
Right. So Taylor Swift,
purity, virginity, and all those Christian things.
Yes. For many years, because this has been known for a while, Taylor Swift has followed the motto of most of us in the music business game. What is that motto? Refrain from mentioning politics, religion, or anything that could create a controversy around your business. Why? Because
your brand.
You don't want to mess up that brand. So Eddie's very, very great point. So for a long time, most artists, you will barely see them come out in a political way because they're trying to adhere to that old notion of just don't talk about politics. Be the artist, as they always say, shut up and sing. So in the case of Taylor Swift, she did shut up and sing for a long time, even though these underpinnings of racism and bigotry were happening and they were using her as a symbol, these groups. So most recently, we have to understand that huge corporations have taken notice and have studied the demographics of young people. And what young people, by and large, are into is more liberalism, diversity. They support LGBTQ rights. They support equal pay for women. They support a lot of the ideologies that are against.
They support do your own thing, leave me alone, as long as you're not hurting nobody.
Exactly. But this is against that conservatism, that's other side, that alt-right feeling that that's not what they're into. But Nike, who's a huge corporate sneaker company, an apparel company, took notice of this fact that was emerging, and they really came out front and appointed Colin Kaepernick as their spokesperson for a new ad campaign that they developed, which created a huge kerfuffle. That kerfuffle was around Nike's stepping out and making a political statement, which would, in some circles, would alienate their audience. But on the contrary, Nike has seen a surge in their stock prices. In other words, the stock value has increased because they've taken this turn. So
with Kaepernick, and then now with Taylor Swift, what does she do?
So now Taylor Swift, great segue, has taken notice on this trend that's occurring, and she, for the first time, has come out using her social media following.
And she has millions of
followers. And what she did was she chimed into not the federal government, not Trump, not even what's going on with Nike. She specifically targeted her message to the state-run, those state-run campaigns, in particular Tennessee, where she's from. She was endorsing a Democratic candidate in Tennessee.
And Tennessee, for those of around the world, if you've been paying attention, is a deep red state.
Yes, very red. But Taylor Swift, in making the statement, really galvanized her young audience, and she has seen, they have seen historic numbers of young people register to vote in Tennessee in preparation for this upcoming election. So, what does that mean for you and I? Let's take another break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the implications of Ms. Swift's decision to be political in nature and what other companies are doing to follow suit right here on the Freedom Radio Hour.
If I'm not mistaken, if we got a quick moment, we might want to look at what's going on with our man with the FCC, Mr. Pod, because he's up for some federal charges, continue to steal, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, let's take a break and talk about all of that when we come back on the Freedom Radio Hour, your number one source for music business news and trends from around the globe.
Freedom Radio Hour.
And we're back live on Capital Radio, 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of Sudan, and on the web at dwildmusicradio.com. I'm Adam Cruz, your host at the Freedom Radio Hour. I'm sitting here next to my fantastic
Eddie
co-host,
Nicholas, and welcome back to another episode of 91.6 FM, D-Wild Music Radio. We're just so glad that you are back with us. So I guess we're going to jump right into it.
Yeah, so we had to cover, since you brought up Mr. Pye.
Yes.
He is the chairman of the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. And he's been under fire a lot from the other side, the Democratic side, because of the extreme changes he's made under his chairmanship, including repeal of net neutrality, allowing telecommunications companies to merge and force upon their independent broadcasters things like must-run packages, which pushes conservative agendas, for example. So he's been underwater and been criticized. Water. Yes, and has been criticized for a while. But what Eddie was talking about was a recent development in what's going on with the FCC. Usually you can count on criticism on the Democratic side, but you rarely hear criticism on his own side, the GOP side. Yes, the Republican side. But they right now are criticizing him as well. Why? Because of a few things that are going on. Number one, we talked about his and propensity towards really gutting any notions that we had around rules for internet consumption and for broadband services. That's your ability to access the internet. So for rural areas, they're really impacted because it's harder to get the kind of spectrum range of internet access when you're in rural communities. And so it was so bad that the government created the Universal Service Fund. That was the ability to provide some support to continue giving broadband access to rural communities. And these rural communities aren't always poor or just those of color. It also affects white communities as well.
Appalachian families.
Exactly. It goes on and on. So Ajit Pai has now been criticized by his own side because of his inability to provide what's called an economic analysis for cutting those funds to begin with. He went in and his people cut those funds. And so even the GOP is saying, wait a minute, you are messing up our rural communities, which are their constituents.
Constituents, yep.
So you need to do something about this Universal Service Fund cut that you just implemented. So he's under fire now on both sides. The other news is that he's greenlit the ability for the largest of these telecommunications companies to offer 5G network. That's going to open up that broadband even more. But it comes at a cost because the smaller internet service providers, they won't be able to afford the licenses that they're charging to make that possible. Only those that can afford it are those with the largest amount.
And Verizon is one of them.
Verizon, Comcast, there's a few of them that can afford these larger expenses because they're large. So it'll basically over time eat away at these smaller internet service providers because they won't be able to keep up. Why is that bad? Because those smaller ISPs are usually the ones that are concentrated in those rural communities. So if you're basically killing away internet access in those rural communities, you're messing up those constituencies. That's why the GOP is upset. And so you're leaving little opportunity for small companies like these these smaller ISPs to exist. I think that's a good segue because there's a lot of crazy news right now. In particular, Microsoft, the gaming company, they've been screaming for months that they have discovered Russian interference in the U.S. election, not just in the past, but it currently it continues, it persists. So they keep saying to the FBI and the Justice Department that this is occurring. You guys need to do something. Why are we talking about it on this show? Because Microsoft has uncovered a huge amount of pirated software for their material, and they've engaged in basically shutting down a bunch of websites that traffic in pirated material. And what do they find besides all their software, pirated software? They find music. And what they're saying is, look, we spent a lot of time. December 2008 was a huge. They busted up a 36 countries piracy ring. So 11 individuals went to prison for it.
What is that big thing that searches the world for espionage and all that? What's that company? What do they call it? Spectrum, something like this.
Yeah, right.
So 007-ish.
It's very 007-ish. So, but Microsoft is ahead of trying to combat piracy within their company because they're losing billions if they don't do this. But the music industry, in sharp contrast, does nothing about it. I also think that we see some interesting things around the DJ world. We need to talk about this. When you travel and you're a traveling DJ and you go from one country to the next, very interesting things can occur from the time you leave your hotel room or the venue to go back to that airport. If you happen to be a person that engages in illegal activity like drug use, you have a heightened sense of awareness around customs and luggage because you know that you don't want to get caught. You don't want to get caught. So for those that enjoy illegal substances, you need to either take that substance before you get to that airport or do something to get rid of it so that you don't have any problems. Most of the traveling DJs that we know that travel all the time, they are well aware of this. Either they don't imbibe, or if they do, they're very discreet and they don't engage customs in any way. Well, Grammy Award winner, DJ and producer, Mr. David Morales. He's in hot water right now.
He has found himself in an incident very similar to that, where he has been accused of carrying a powdered substance, whether it was residue 0.3 grams or whatever it was. It was minuscule, but Japan has a no tolerance
for any type of drugs, and they considered what he was doing was smuggle contraband. So we shall see.
We shall see. I think for Japan, that powdery substance they claim is MDMA, ecstasy, in the street. So they're claiming that Mr. Morales trafficked and or engaged in smuggling, according to
from wherever his last stop
so
was.
he was coming from China, who has its own
set of
tolerance.
rules. Yes.
And he had arrived in Japan. It happened in the afternoon on a Friday, 3:55 p.m. I believe, and they got him, they questioned him, and so what he's facing right now is a huge, hefty fine, but much more important and more serious is 7 years in prison for legally smuggling contraband like this. So our thoughts and prayers are with David Morales, and his claim is that it wasn't his, that he's been framed, and to Eddie's point, we shall see. What is the takeaway, though? If you're a traveling DJ and you enjoy different kinds of things, make sure that you don't have it in your luggage, or even if you don't engage in anything like that, it might be helpful to look in your luggage before you leave your hotel room. Maybe take a picture of the inside or something. Just do something extra that prevents any chance that you might have trouble.
Or simply
Abstain, exactly. But in his case, he's saying he didn't have that or he wasn't engaged in that. So if somebody plants something in your luggage, you might want to look in your luggage before you check it in, for example.
Because, and real quick, because my first thing was like, well, ain't he kind of old to be doing that?
I know, and then others say, people still do ecstasy? Because it's...
jokes all aside, but, things like that come through your mind.
Yeah.
When something like that.
But anyway, we'll keep you posted here on the Freedom Radio Hour. Thanks so much for tuning in. Check out Eddie Nicholas's Do You Want to Dance LP, available now. Check out yours truly, Adam Cruz. I have a brand new single, Trust Your Instincts.
Yes.
Vote. Available now at mixtapesessions.com, and it will be available worldwide coming up at the end of the month. So I will keep you abreast of all of that. Pre-order your copy on TrackSource, download our free app, and of course, like and share all of our wonderful videos and subscribe today. Have a great weekend and a great week ahead.
Peace and love. 91.6 FM, the Heartbeat of